Hey everyone, my name is Mujan, and today we're going to go over all of our GMP policies, our company policies, rules, and all the food safety rules that we have to follow every day. So first things first, if you're a new employee or if you have a new car, you need to make sure that you see HR and you register your vehicle with the office. You will have to fill out a form, and they will give you a parking permit sticker. So that will ensure that nobody from outside the company takes up our parking spots. So after that, one other thing that we want to cover is we don't want to park our bike here. This is a ladder, a locked ladder that is used to get to the roof. There's a designated bicycle parking in the back. You will have to bring your own lock, but it's within camera view and it's safe for people to park their bicycles. When you're entering, you always use your fob. If you don't have your fob or if you forgot it for any reason, just ring the doorbell. We should not be opening the doors for anybody. Even if you know them, you don't want to open the doors because everybody should enter with their own key fobs. And if you don't have your key fob for the day, just ring the doorbell and one of the supervisors will come and let you in. So all the lunches, food or drinks or lunch bags should be stored either on this shelf or inside the fridge. The fridge needs to be emptied every Friday because our cleaners clean it out. So please make sure if you have any extra food to take it home on Fridays. If you have any cups or Tupperware, take it home and wash it at home. Do not leave them at work. Foods or drinks should never be brought into the locker rooms. The locker room should only be used to put your dirty coat inside the laundry hamper, to hang your coats on the hooks, your shoes on the shoe rack, and your personal belongings or valuables inside the locker. Never store foods or drinks inside your lockers, and also the white uniforms that we provide you should not be stored in the locker room. The reason is if you have your outside jacket or anything else that could be contaminated inside your locker and then you put the uniform inside, they're gonna come in contact and get contaminated. Clean uniforms should always be used directly from the clean uniform locker and then hung on the hooks inside the plant, but they should never be hung on these hooks because again, your jackets are hung here so they could come in contact. We also shouldn't put anything on top of the lockers. That's due to dust collection, so the top of the locker should always be cleared for the cleaners to wipe on a regular basis. Bathrooms are a shared space, so we need to make sure that they're kept clean. So treat this space same way that you treat your bathroom at home. Please make sure that you aim properly in the toilet. As employees in a food facility, personal hygiene is very important. So it's important that you wash your hands after the bathroom. It's also important to take daily showers and wear deodorant, especially in the summer months. When you go to the bathroom, you need to make sure the door is closed behind you. We do have door closers, so they should close automatically, but it's important to not have the doors open. If, let's say, you're going on your lunch break, when you come out, you need to take off your coat and your hairnet and you hang them here on the hooks before you go to the bathroom. You should never wear your hairnets, your lab coats, or any other parts of your uniform inside the bathroom because that could contaminate it. Same thing applies to the lunchroom. If you're going on your lunch to eat, always take off your uniform here. So always take it off here before you go into the locker room or lunchroom or bathroom. Again, that comes down to contamination. If you're eating whatever is in your lunch could contaminate your lab coat, which is going to be exposed to the food products inside the plant. These hooks in the hallway are reserved for hanging your uniforms. You should never hang your outside jackets or shipping jackets on these because these jackets get dirty and we don't want them touching our clean uniforms and contaminate products because you will be wearing this to handle food afterwards. Sometimes people wear aprons in the mixing area and then when they go on their lunch breaks, they hang the aprons here. Aprons should always be thrown in the garbage. This is only reserved for uniforms. Gloves should also never be worn outside of the plant. As soon as you get to the door, always throw away your gloves. As part of our GMP rules, we shouldn't be bringing any medications into the plant. So if you have any prescription or any Advil over-the-counter medication, just take it in the lunchroom. Never bring it in your pocket inside the plant. If you ever have a small cut or you're bleeding, notify your supervisor. And this is a first aid kit that you can use. You can use the Band-Aids here. These are the Band-Aids. The blue Band-Aids must be used. Even if you have a cut from home, if you come to work, change your Band-Aid to one of these. The reason is these are metal detectable Band-Aids, so that if for whatever reason the Band-Aid falls off and into the product, the metal detectors will be able to detect it. So always use this for all your cuts, whether it happens at work or at home. So at Sweets from the Earth, we're a vegan company, so that means that there's no egg, dairy, milk, or meat products. And we also have two plants. There's gluten-free and nut-free facility. These two plants are segregated because of allergen control. In nut-free, obviously there's no nuts. So it's really important that you don't bring any nut or peanut products into the building, even in the lunchroom, employee areas, in the bathroom, in the locker rooms. Nuts are a serious allergen and it could cause death. So it's very important to not bring any nut products or peanut products into the building. Whenever we enter the production areas, we need to make sure that we always wash our hands. So even if you just went to the bathroom and you wash your hands in the bathroom, you need to make sure that you still wash your hands inside the plant, because these doors are touched by everybody and germs travel by touching. So you need to make sure that you wash your hand again before touching the food product. Before we enter the plant, we need to make sure to always put our uniforms on. The first step is the hairnet, and the reason is because we want to cover our hairs to make sure that none of the hairs fall onto your uniform. So you always wear your hairnet first, make sure all the hair is covered. You can use the mirror that's on the wall here to ensure nothing's sticking out. And then after the hairnet, you will put your uniform on. For your own protection, make sure you always wear safety boots. They have to be certified safety boots with a green triangle. This is to prevent your toes or feet from getting crushed. If there's a forklift nearby, if there's an accident that could happen, this will protect you. The next step is to always step into this mat with this powder. This powder is designed for sanitizing the shoes. There's been cases where people step over it, but the whole point is to step into it. Don't worry about spreading the powder a little bit, that's fine. So we use the fob. Hand washing is important. Always use soap. Never just use sanitizer. That's the last step. You need to always use soap and scrub carefully between the fingers and on the wrists. These are the areas that don't get washed properly, and often that's where the germs are. The water turns on by pressing on the bottom of the sink. So you can use one or two pieces of paper towel. And last step is sanitizer. You should never block the emergency exits. Also, any doors that have this sign on them means that if you open them, we're going to get an alarm and the security company is going to call us. So do not use these doors unless there's an emergency, and always keep them clear in case there's an emergency. People can go through this and exit the building. All new employees, when they get started, their face and ID gets registered in the time clock. Every time you start your shift, you punch in. If you go on your break, you have to punch out. Once you're done with your break and come back to your station, you punch back in, and then you have to punch out again when you leave work. People should be punching in after they've already gotten dressed, put their uniform on and wash their hands, and then they punch in. There are no mobile phones or earphones allowed inside the plant. Phone devices are dirty. You take them everywhere with us. They don't get cleaned or sanitized frequently. So if you bring the phone to the plant, you touch it, and then you touch food product, you're going to contaminate the food product. So that's the reason why we don't allow phones inside the plant. And also, it's a distraction from work. Only authorized managers or supervisors are allowed to use their phones for work purposes. While inside the plants, there is no food or drinks, gums, or candies allowed. In terms of any accessories, there's no watches, jewelry, bracelets, any smartwatches, step trackers, piercings, fake nails, fake lashes, any other accessories on the face, any hair accessories that could fall off your hair into the food are not allowed. These are all hazards that could fall into food, and that's why they're not allowed in the plant. Due to scent sensitivities of your coworkers, no perfumes or scented lotions are allowed, aside from deodorants. If you get thirsty, your It's during your work hours and outside your break time. You can use a water fountain here. It's cold water. This will eliminate the need for having to step out, taking off your uniform, washing your hands again. It just saves time. As mentioned before, we have two facilities in this building. One is nut-free and one is gluten-free. Each facility has their own uniform. Here it says the colors are different. It says gluten-free. So we need to make sure that we never cross the two facilities in the wrong uniform. So every time you need to go, for whatever reason, some of the staff have to go to both plants, you need to go through the entrance, change your uniform, and grab a new uniform for that plant. Again, if you're going from one plant to the other, you have to wash your hands again every time you enter the plant. And always scrub for 20 seconds. In the gluten-free facility, if you need to go for lunch, again, you shouldn't be bringing your uniforms to the lunch area or the bathrooms. So we have the hooks in this area at the entrance. So you should always hang your hooks, go on your lunch break, and then when you're done with your break, you come back, put on your uniform, wash your hands, and then punch right back in for your hours. In addition to our two facilities that are nut-free and gluten-free, we also have allergens in each plant. So it's important to do allergen control within each plant. In nut-free, we have soy and wheat and gluten. Those are the two allergens here, which is why we have the color coding here. Green is for soy, and yellow is for wheat and gluten. So it's important to keep the colors segregated. That's the other reason why we have the buckets in different colors. So when you're scaling ingredients, you need to make sure that you use the correct color coding. And you also need to make sure that you always use the correct color on the lid. So if you're using a yellow lid, don't put a green lid on it. You have to use a matching color lid. We're now in gluten-free facility, so the allergens are a little bit different. We do have nuts in the gluten-free facility. As you can see, there are more colors involved. Blue is for peanuts, red is for tree nuts, gray is for sesame, green is for soy, and they use yellow for no allergens here. Same with the scoops. The scoops are color-coded, so they should always be stored together based on their colors. And if, let's say, you're scooping something that has soy in it, you need to use a green bucket along with a green scoop. When it comes to utensils or buckets, we should never share them between the two plants. So if you have a yellow bucket in nut-free, we should never lend it to the gluten-free plant or vice versa, because even though we wash them, there could still be traces of allergens, and it's really important not to share any utensils or tools between the two facilities. Even when it comes to cleaning tools like the floor scrubber or vacuum cleaners or mops, they should never be shared between the two plants. Also, that applies to all the carts and trolleys and the oven racks. Every plant has their own. So that's why it's important to follow the color coding. So for example, when you have the plastic carts, red means for gluten-free, blue or green means for nut-free, and black is for pick-pack area. So right now we're in a nut-free warehouse. Both warehouses have a specific aisle just for allergens. So for example, in nut-free, this aisle is where all the allergens are stored. The allergens are labeled by color. Earlier in the video, we spoke about yellow representing wheat or gluten. So as you can see, this is where all the wheat or gluten products are stored. If you walk down further down the aisle, we have soy here. So all the wheat, gluten, and soy allergens should always be stored in this aisle and never on the other side. Everything else in the rest of the warehouse are just non-allergens and packaging materials. So that's one part of allergen control. And the other part that's really important is if, for example, you have soy here, you need to make sure you also store soy above it. The reason for that is if, let's say, there's a spill from above, you don't want soy contaminating non-soy underneath it. So best practice is to always store allergens that are the same above each other. Right now we're in the nut-free pick pack area, and this is the door between nut-free and gluten-free. This door should remain closed at all times. Only authorized employees are allowed to open this door. So you should never, if you're one of the employees that has access to this door, don't open it for others. It's only for your own use. When it comes to transferring of ingredients from the two facilities, people shouldn't just walk through and grab it. They should always check with the other supervisor before they grab any ingredients from the other facility, just to make sure that they don't need it and the other facility runs out of that ingredient. That's one reason, and then the other reason is it's again allergen control. Especially if something's open. So, for example, if you're looking for a pail of flavor, for example, that's used in both facilities, if the pail has been open and it's no longer sealed, it cannot be transferred to the other facilities. Only sealed raw ingredients can be transferred between the two facilities, and they should always be documented. All of our warehouses, including the freezers and coolers, have a hold spot. You can see it up there. It's usually marked with an orange sign that says hold. That spot is designated for anything that's on QA hold. So let's say if there's a quality issue and we have to put something on hold so it doesn't get shipped or sold, then we put it in that spot. So in the warehouse, we have that for raw materials. We have it in the raw freezer for any frozen raw materials that are on hold, and we also have it in the raw coolers. There's a hold spot also in the finished goods freezer, and that's for any finished goods products that have been placed on QA hold. So that spot should always remain empty and only be reserved for anything that's on QA hold. So if you're handling open foods, such as at a depositing stage, or if you're working on a flow wrapper and the product is not packaged, you need to make sure that you always wear your sleeves and your gloves. The sleeves is so that your arms don't touch the product. So at all times, you need to wear sleeves, whether you're at mixing, depositing, or packaging, you need to wear the sleeves. But if the product's already packaged, in wrapping, it's not open anymore, then you don't need to wear the sleeves anymore. So as you're unloading the product, if you touch your nose or face or beard, or you touch your mask to adjust it, make sure to always change your glove after, because that glove just touch your germs. So it's important to not touch food after that. So whenever a product is produced and deposited in the depositing department, we always put tags on the ovens, on the oven rack. So this is to identify what the product is, what date it was deposited, what the lot code is, and which rack number it is. So for example, if there were 10 racks done, these are the sequential numbers for each rack. And this is how the packaging crew identifies what the product is, because sometimes you have some products that are very similar looking, and that's why it's really important to look at the tags and making sure that they're not mixed up. And also, because the lot code is there, this also helps with tracking to ensure that the older products are packaged first. Ensure that there's a tray on top. This will protect the products from any condensation dripping from the freezers. So the top shelf should always be empty trays upside down. So when it comes to loading the racks, we always load the trays from top to bottom and front and back. So for example, the next tray is going to go here, and the next one will be right in front of it. And the reason for that is you want to make sure that if you're sliding the trays onto the rack and there's any metal shavings created from the friction, you want to make sure there's no product underneath. But then when it comes to unloading, you do the reverse. You unload from the bottom to the top. So again, the same thing, because as you unloading, you're dragging the tray onto the slides. So you want to make sure that there's nothing underneath. That's why you always unload from the bottom up. So it's the reverse of loading. Also, when you're loading or unloading the trays, don't drag it onto these slides. Lift it a little bit and then place it on top. Same with removing. Lift it and then take it out. You want to reduce the friction between the tray and the slide as much as possible, because metal against metal is never a good thing. So in this example, you'll see that the trays are too low and the cookies are falling from such a distance, and this could lead to breakage of the cookies. So it's important to put more trays on to reduce the distance that the cookies are falling. I would even add one more here. Don't allow the garbage bins to overflow. We should also make sure that garbage bins are never too close to open product because of obvious reasons, garbage and food product. All the hoses and power cords should always be hung on the wall on the designated areas where there's a hook. The hose should never be left on the floor. So one of the reasons is, first of all, if it's on the floor, it's a tripping hazard. And secondly, sometimes the hoses or power cords could come into contact with food surfaces, or let's say your table surface where you work, and that could contaminate. So if it's been on the floor and then on the table, and then you prepare food on the table, that could contaminate the food. Lean on the tables or sit on the tables. That's a big no-no. You shouldn't be doing this. Also, sometimes people rest their feet on the shelf here. That is not allowed. These are food contact surfaces. We also store ingredients here sometimes, so it's important not to put the bottom of your feet or sit on the tables. It's part of a food safety program. Boxes and buckets should never be placed on the floor. We should always put them either on trolleys if we're about to move them, or if they have to stay in the spot, we put them on the black skids or the smaller black skids. In production, we try not to bring wooden skids as much as possible. And the reason for that is the wood particles could break off and fall into the batter. That has happened before, which is why we have that policy. Also, it's important to not stack wooden skids in the packaging or production room, because if it's high up, it's more likely to be close, in close proximity to food products. Which brings me to the next point, and that's why whenever we have batters and bowls or bins, we always cover them because of that. Because if somebody walks by or something falls, you want to make sure that it's not falling into the food, because it will be very hard to see it unless it's metal. So that's the reason. And the reason why buckets on a skid and not on the floor is we all walk with our shoes. The floors are dirty. So if you put a bucket on the floor and then the bottom of the bucket gets dirty, and then you put the bucket on the table because you're trying to scale a recipe, then your tabletop, which is a food contact surface, becomes contaminated with germs. Brings us to why we wear gloves. Every time you handle anything that was close to the floor, anytime you handle a garbage bin, or if let's say you grab a bag of ingredients that's in a warehouse, you don't know where it's been before. It could be contaminated in the truck or wherever it came from. So if you're handling the bag of flour, for example, don't put it on your table. Put it on the skid, and then after you're done handling, change your gloves before you go to scale the products, because you don't want to touch the same gloves to the food product that you're about to prepare. Films are food contact packaging. It's basically primary packaging because it's in contact with the product. So any primary packaging should always be covered after use. So if you bring a brand new roll from the warehouse, you use it on the floor wrapper, but you don't end up finishing the whole roll, you bring it back to this shelf in the packaging area, but you need to ensure that you always cover it with a bag. This bag, they usually come in a bag originally, so you can just keep the original bag and just reuse it after you're done using that roll of film. When the cleaners or maintenance crew disassemble or reassemble any machinery for cleaning or troubleshooting, they should always clean up after themselves, collect all the tools and small parts and put them in a designated toolbox or area. But they should never be left in production area loose, because this could be a foreign object hazard that could end up in food and wasting a lot of product. All right, so when cleaning the work surfaces, we always get rid of the residue first. Never put a metal scraper to the belts because it could damage and cut holes in it. So always use plastic scrapers. Once that's done, then spray with Foam Safe, which is a detergent. You let it sit for 3 minutes. So after 3 minutes, you just rinse it with water, wet towel. All you need is 1 or 2 pieces. You don't need 10 pieces. And then after that, just spray with sanitizer and let it air dry. When you're in the packaging department, after you empty a rack, because all the trays have been unloaded and floor wrapped, we always bring the empty rack to the dishwashing room to get washed. That should be done at the end of each cycle, just to ensure that the racks don't get dirty. And also, we want to always ensure that the racks that we're using are clean. So we want to make sure that there's no residue or metal shavings on the slides. There are no glass or hard plastics allowed in the plant. The glass could shatter and get into food. When glass breaks, it spreads everywhere, so it's really hard to find it. So that's why food plants usually have no glass policy. When it comes to hard plastic, sometimes it's inevitable because some of the equipment, the buttons, they have plastic. But we have a list of all the hard plastic that's registered. So every time there's something broken, you need to report it to your supervisor so that we see where the pieces went. At the stage of packaging, always make sure to check the product really well, because the packagers are the last people that see the product before it goes to the customer. So it's important to really check to make sure the quality is there and there's no foreign objects. If you do spot any foreign objects, you always have to let your supervisor know right away. Just notify them right away. If there's a problem on the machine that's causing product issues, let's say the floor wrapper is cutting the products and is damaging too many, you need to stop the line and notify your supervisor right away. And depending on the issue, they can ask the mechanic to take a look at it, or they could fix it. But it's important to make sure to always minimize waste as much as possible. All the products that run through the floor wrapper must go through a metal detector. And the metal detector, every 2 hours, we do a testing just to make sure that it's working properly. And that's why we have these test ones with different types of metal, ferrous, non-ferrous, and stainless steel. So every 2 hours, we put these bit of product and run it through the metal detector to ensure that the metal detector is still running okay. When it comes to key fobs, don't use a lanyard, because if you use this and let's say you're running a floor wrapper, even if you hide it inside your coat, if you bend over, it could come out and it could get stuck in the chain and pull you. So as you can see, this is a strangulation hazard. Everybody should get one of these. So for your own safety, when handling racks, always hold the racks like this. Never pull or push the racks with your hands outside, because sometimes if you're going through the hallways and you're not careful and you hit the wall, your hand could get crushed between the rack and the wall. You can still accomplish the same task by keeping your hands safe. So if you ever need to lift something heavy, always use your legs. Never use your back. You need to always use your legs to lift anything heavy. If there's ever wet floor from a spill or from the sink, or if you're mopping any parts of the floor, always put a wet floor sign on both sides. So if it's like a long area, put one here and put one on the other side so that anybody entering from this side can see the sign, and anybody walking from the other side can also see the sign. It's part of prevention so that nobody slips on the floor. So these totes, the reason why we have these is these are spill mats, so that if there's any oil spillage, they will catch them. But sometimes it spills over, so it's important to check this regularly and make sure if there's any spill, report it to the cleaner so that they can clean it up. This is a slip hazard, so it's really important to make sure that if you accidentally spill some oil, you report it to the supervisor, and then the supervisor can notify the cleaners to clean it. When you're traveling with carts, don't overstack it so that you're not able to see in front of you. You should always make sure that it's at a level where you have eyesight to the front so that you see where you're going and you don't crash into things. So this is a slab line where we make our bars. This is the hopper where the dough goes inside the machine. It's important to make sure you never put your hand here underneath this paddle, because as this turns, even though you think there's enough space, there's not enough space. It will crush your hands and your hands will get bruised. So never put your hand under any of the paddles or the rollers Also have circular blades here. Although there's a guard on top of it, there's still room for here for the hand to enter. So you need to make sure that you don't bring your hands close to the blades as they're running. Same with the guillotine at the end of the machine. When it comes to cleaning the machine, we need to clean the belt. So the belt will be running, but we need to make sure that when you're cleaning, always pay attention to where your hand is going so that your hands don't go underneath the rollers. We have a few VBank machines in the facility, in both facilities, so it's important to always install the guard in the front. This blade goes up and down, so we should never bring our hand close to it, and we need to make sure that the machine is not run without the guard on. When running the cutting machine and when you're cleaning, you need to make sure that you're careful when you're cleaning the blade. Never run your hand along the blade like that because this is very sharp and could cut you. When you're running the product through the flow wrapper, every flow wrapper has these guards for a reason. And they all have sensors here so that when the guard is open, the machine will stop. However, if you put the flow wrapper in the jog mode, which is when you manually adjust the machine, it allows you to open these guards. So it's important never to run the machine on jog mode. And on a regular basis, when you're running the product, never put your hands inside the guard towards the knife. Never try to adjust the belt while the machine is running. Basically, don't touch the machine unless it's stopped and powered off. Only mechanics are allowed to fix or adjust the machines. Operators should not be fixing the machines while it's running. The main point is to always power off all machinery before you put your hand anywhere. This machine also has a jaw that opens and closes. If people are trying to adjust the film, they might accidentally put their hand through, but you need to make sure that you never put your hand close to where the jaw is. Always make sure to handle the hot racks with those pan grabbers. The inside of the door is very hot, so when you take out the rack, make sure you don't touch the door with your hands because it's been exposed to the heat, so it's very hot. All the hot racks stay here, and then they get moved to the hallway to further cool down. But never touch the racks without thinking. You need to make sure that they're cool first before grabbing them when you're inside. This is the humidex chart. So the way you read it is the temperature is on this axis, the relative humidity is on this axis. So right now we're at almost 37 Celsius and 31% humidity. So 37 and 31 humidity is here, is in the yellow zone. So it's this one. So that means that it's a little hot and humid. So you need to take very frequent water breaks when you're in this zone. Pallets should never be placed on their sides. Same with these plastic trays. They should never be placed on their sides on the floor. Everything should always be stacked. In the warehouse, the first skids, when you take off the plastic wrapping, a lot of times you just leave it like this. And this could be a tripping hazard, and it could also get stuck in the wheels of the forklift and the walkies and damage them. So it's important to always cut these and then just throw them in the garbage. So basically, if the pallet is almost done, there's no need for this plastic to be around it. It also looks tidier. So the automatic freezer doors, they all have sensors here. And this is a sensor that if it sees something, an object or a person in front of it, the door shouldn't close. So if you're, for whatever reason, standing in the doorway and you're standing here, that's not in line with the sensor, it's not going to see you. The door is eventually going to close on you. See? So that's not good. If you're standing in the doorway because you're moving something, you should always be in this line where the sensors are so that it sees you and the door doesn't close. If I stand here, the door won't close. Sometimes people cover these sensors to prop the doors open. Please don't do that. That could increase the temperature inside the freezer, and then we start getting alarms on our side. Also, leaving the freezer door open could spoil the raw materials that are inside, all the ingredients. You should never climb the racks. Always use a ladder. You should always have at least 3 points of contact when you go up a ladder. Never hold a box like that with only 2 points of contact and then go up the ladder. That's a safety issue. You need to always have 3 points. So when you're driving the forklift around the corners, always slow down and honk your horn. This is for safety, so that if there's any people walking around the corner, they're aware that there's a forklift. Also, only licensed employees are allowed to drive the forklift. So after you're done shipping or receiving, make sure to always close the dock doors. Like press it all the way down and lock it. If you ever notice that there is sunlight coming through the doors, report it to management or your supervisors so that they can repair the door, because that could be a point of entry for pests. Fly lights and mouse traps, they're everywhere. So all of our pest control equipment have numbers on them, and the numbers correspond to the labels that are on the walls. So in this case, the L is a fly light. That's fly light number 5, and then there's a trap number 19. So a lot of times people move these traps around, but don't do that. Don't use it as a prop to keep the doors open. When pest control company Orkin comes to check all the traps on a bi-weekly basis, they check these, and they need to be able to find the traps exactly where they're supposed to be because they follow a map. Also, the mouse traps have a hole here. This hole should always be towards the wall, not this way. Should always be this way because mice travel against the wall, so that's why the hole is always against the wall. Activity, you see ants, mice, cockroaches, spiders, always report it to your supervisor so that they can notify management to call the pest control company, and that way we can treat it right away before they spread. Never leave any open ingredient bags like this. This is how pest activity starts. Any bags that are open should be taped shut with a blue tape and then placed inside a blue bag. And the reason why we always use the color blue for everything, including the Band-Aids, the tape, and the bag, is because if for any reason any piece gets cut and falls into food, it's more visible than using clear tape or anything white. So it's all about visibility and the packaging crew being able to locate them. So this is an example of somebody who opened a bag of ingredients and just left it open. So this is open for pests to come in. The doors open and close, and it could get in any day and attack that, and that's how infestation starts. So if there's ever flour or oil or flavor or anything spills, please clean it up right away. Again, we're going back to pest activity. That's how pest activity starts, and also it could be a slip hazard, and it's just the place is going to be dirty. So it's important to always report it. Either clean it yourself, or if there's a cleaner, they can clean it.